Zebulon Pike's Quest West, The Journey for Pike's Peak.
When asked to name the people responsible for westward expansion in the United States, most people will recall Lewis and Clark as the main contributors. However, many other famous explorers with significant impacts have been overlooked by the history books. Perhaps the biggest example coming from Zebulon Pike. Zebulon's search for the sources of both the Mississippi and Red Rivers, despite not necessarily accomplishing what they set out to do, allowed them to push the boundaries of American expansion. This, in conjunction with further interaction between the U.S. and native populations, as well as the Spanish, solidified Zebulon as a chief contributor in the U.S. expansion and exploration of untapped western territories. Zebulon Pike was born in Trenton, New Jersey on the 5th of January 1779. At the age of 15, he joined his father's regiment and by 1805 was already stationed in the city of St. Louis, Missouri. Soon after this, he was ordered into two major expeditions that pushed the exploration of new, unblemished western territories. The first of which, ordered by General Wilkinson in the summer of 1805, was to find the source of the Mississippi River. Along his travels, he found many sites for the military, talking to and building relationships with the native tribes such as the Dakota and Ojibwe tribes. This is truly one of the first times in history that Americans were interacting and building relationships with centrally located Native Americans. Pike famously said,
"Smoke the pipe of peace, bury the tomahawk, and become one nation."
Pike was a large proponent for positive relations with the Native Americans, as they would help create a unified and strong country. Aside from Native Americans, the majority of the interactions Americans had in the Louisiana Purchase stemmed from French and Spanish traders, but Pike was told to seek out British operators on American soil. Zebulon's journey was only partially successful because he incorrectly named Leech Lake as the source of the Mississippi River. However, he did accurately map out the northern parts of the river, which made him qualified for the future job of exploring into the Louisiana Purchase territory.
For Pike's second expedition, he was tasked with testing if ships could sail up the Arkansas River, exploring and mapping the newly acquired Louisiana Purchase. He also intended to return freed captives to the Osage Nation, to effect peace between the Osage and the Kansa, and establish relations with the Comanches. This is also significant because it shows the attempt of the U.S. to make peace with the Native Americans. The Spanish were not particularly fond of the Louisiana Purchase because it caused them to lose land. When this new expedition spread to the Spanish governors, they sent 300 troops to stop Zebulon Pike and the Pawnee Indian tribe, but Pike and his men were not there yet because they had fallen behind schedule. The Spanish ordered the Pawnee Nation to not allow any Americans to pass through them. When they did arrive, he established relations with the natives and took down the Spanish flag and raised the American flag.
I again reiterated the demand for the flag, adding that it was impossible for the nation to have two fathers, that they must either be children of the Spaniards or acknowledge their American father.
The chief of the Pawnee tribe then laid the Spanish flag at Zebulon's feet and raised the American one instead. When Pike and his men were set to leave, the chief said that he was ordered to not let them pass. Pike told him that his commanding officer ordered him to explore further, so he was going to go or die trying. The Pawnee chief said,
"Why, you have only 25 warriors here, and I can command 1,000, and have them here in less than half a day. How then can you go if I forbid it? You are a brave young warrior, and your men are all braves also. But what can so few do? I respect you. I love you. I love you as my own son. I love brave men. Do not oblige me to hurt you. You must not pass."
Through charismatic diplomacy, Pike was able to get the Pawnee chief to relent and allow him and his company through to continue west.
After dealing with the Pawnee tribe, Pike and his men continued west. They explored the vast prairies of Kansas, the Red River, and touched Nebraska very briefly. Finally, they reached the Rocky Mountains, where they attempted to scale what is now called Pike's Peak. Unfortunately, they were unsuccessful. The harsh conditions, such as the sub-zero temperatures and intimidating canyons and gorges, proved to be too much a challenge for the Pike and his men. Some even experienced starvation after getting lost in the Royal Gorge and not being able to find their way out. Later, Pike would disclose his belief that the mountain contained gold and essentially galvanized the Colorado Gold Rush. Any who sought out Pike's Peak in search of gold were called Pike's Peakers. Though not much gold was found, Zebulon's efforts helped to map out the impressive Rocky Mountains, populate the area, and attract immigration. Pike's Peak is one of the major contributors to our nation's diversity today. After they attempted to climb the mountain, Pike and his men found camp on the Red River, or so they thought. As it turns out, Pike and his men were not on the Red River, which was part of the land bought during the Louisiana Purchase. They were in fact on the Rio Grande, which according to borders remained to be Spanish territory. Due to this, the Spanish inevitably captured Pike and his men. The Spanish first took them to Santa Fe, where Pike gathered information on the military weaknesses that the Spanish presented. This information ultimately allowed the U.S. to expand its movement into Texas, which the United States had not acquired during the Louisiana Purchase. Pike and his men were later moved to Chihuahua, northern Mexico. A lot of his papers and notes were confiscated during this time, but he was eventually escorted back towards Texas, and in Natchitoches, right on the border between Louisiana and Texas, he was liberated July 1st, 1807. Pike unfortunately died in the Battle of York in 1813, but the battle was ultimately a success for the United States. Before Zebulon Pike died, he wrote a journal about his adventures that became extremely popular. The journal describes his expedition and the wonders of Kansas that inspired many white Americans to make the journey west and begin establishing settlements. Though part of Zebulon Pike's expedition wasn't a success, it was extremely influential and valuable to the United States. His accounts in his journals helped the westward expansion movement, along with the report he published which helped open the Santa Fe Trail, leading to increased trade with the plains and mountain tribes. His information on the Spanish military weakness allowed the United States to expand into New Mexico. Today, Zebulon has a mountain as well as 10 counties named after him. There is no doubt that Zebulon Pike is vastly overshadowed by his counterparts Lewis and Clark, but his accomplishments should not be forgotten because of his monumental impact on expanding the western frontier, especially in the southern portion of the Louisiana Purchase, as well as in his exploration and documentation of lands that were untouched by European hands.